Number 7 is going to be Mr. Freeze. Well, Mr. Freeze, at first from the comic books, he was just a cliched scientist who had a knack for cold. Yeah, sound familiar? Well, anyways, what Batman the Animated Series did with Mr. Freeze is that they took him and they made him into a tragic character with a sad story, and he was more relatable, and his character was more sad, and the character of Mr. Freeze was more solemn and less goofy than before. So the comics adapted that version quite well. And even Schmucker did adopt a storyline from Batman the Animated Series. Well, I don't know why the hell he did it. It was still stupid anyways. I mean, my thoughts on that version is quite cold. Yeah, shitty pun intended. Well, I think that this version definitely worked out. And, you know, he had a cool costume and it worked. Well, the new Batman Adventures, they kept the same personality he had, you know, and the same storyline and the same thing with Mr. Freeze. And all they did really, they just changed his suit a little bit, and with his eyes, instead of wearing those red goggles, his eyes are red themselves, kind of. And that's all they did. His personality stayed the same. So Mr. Freeze, he personality-wise, I can't really judge, but in the remake, his costume is cooler, so I'm going to say the remake wins. Alright, number 8, it's going to be Poison Ivy. Well, Poison Ivy is, well, of course we've noticed a lot that a lot of these villains represent a lot of the bad side that's in us. For example, Poison Ivy represents our obsession over little things that really should not matter. For her, it is plants. She obsesses over plants more than human life. And Batman the Animated Series, it showed that quite well. And the first episode, it did a good job of showing her obsessions. And I liked it, and it worked out pretty well. And she was a good villain, you know? She was a strong female villain. And well, in the remake, they kept that, and all they did to her basically was they made her more plant-like. And what I mean by that is that they made her skin more greenish or plantish. And obviously they made her even more hot than she was before. But her personality was pretty much the same. And I guess I'm gonna have to choose the remake because she was hotter, and that was really the only change. Alright, number 9 is going to be the Joker. Well, you know, Joker, he's basically the same throughout every interpretation, just a little bit different. And Batman the Animated Series offered its own good version of the Joker. And when I think of the Joker, I think of him as the Joker from Batman the Animated Series. I mean, and I think of the voice of Mark Hamill as Joker. So I'm glad that they didn't make just an animated version of Jack Nicholson. I'm glad they made their own version of the Joker. And well, he was crazy and creepy as he can be in a kids TV show. If it wasn't a kids TV show, he probably would have been even scarier and creepier. But well, I think it was a good version of him. And his laugh, my gosh, the laugh. And anyways, I like that version. And then the new Batman Adventures, well, let's look at the animation. We went from here to here. It was an animation downgrade. Okay, but what about personality? It was the same with the personality. He didn't seem to have the right attitude. He didn't seem so funny. I mean, with the other version, with the original version, I found myself laughing at his sadistic sense of humor. I think it was meant to be that way. But with this one, he just didn't seem so clowny or funny. And I think they downplayed him quite a bit. So I think with this one, the original definitely wins. Well, Batman the Animated Series has my favorite interpretation of Robin so far. They made Robin not a little boy, but kind of like this older teenager. You know, they made him more adult, but not completely adult. And I like that interpretation. And I also liked his personality, his voice. You know, he was Robin to me, you know? And I liked his costume. And obviously, even though it's Dick Grayson, they didn't put him in the original Dick Grayson costume. They did put him in the Tim Drake costume, but, you know, for good reason. And the new Batman Adventures, well, we get a new kid as Robin, obviously. And now we have Tim Drake as Robin. You see, in this cartoon, Jason Todd doesn't exist. So the next Robin is Tim Drake, and he just has a red and black costume. And he's kind of a smaller kid. So I think his costume isn't as cool as the other one, which has red, black, and green. But this one, they just took away it, so it's simple, you know, red and black. Of course, with the yellow on the cape, but that's with every version. So I think the costume, it's still pretty cool, but just not quite as good as the other version. And as for the personality, his jokes didn't seem as funny as the original Robin. And another thing, this guy's so small. How can he beat up a bad guy? I mean, I could understand with Dick Grayson beating up bad guys, but this Tim Drake, he's so small. They should have made him bigger. So I'm gonna have to side with the original. Alright, Batgirl. Batman the Animated Series, they introduced Batgirl, and she was cool, and they had her in her original costume, and I like that. And she was nice, and she was pretty cute too, you know. And I don't know, she was okay. But in the new Batman Adventures, they put her in a newer costume, and they made her more adult. She was probably in her 20s by the new Batman Adventures. And, well, this is kind of a hard decision to side on, but I guess I'm just going to side with the remake, since she just seemed cooler, and she could fight better and all that stuff. Alright, number 12 is Dick Grayson. Now this time I'm comparing him as from Robin to Nightwing. In Batman the Animated Series, he was Robin, and he played a good Robin. And you know, I like that character, and he was solid. And in the new Batman Adventures, he was into Nightwing. So it was more like a continuum, and I liked it. And he played a pretty good Nightwing too, and I liked his personality and, you know, how he had developed. So with this one, I'm gonna have to side with a remake. And let's see, the next one is gonna be Batman. So Batman the Animated Series, they put him in the gray and the dark blue costume, you know, with a bat logo and the yellow surrounding it, and he had a cool voice, Kevin Conroy. He has the best Batman voice, and he was a cool Batman. And in the new Batman Adventures, they simply changed his costume a little bit. So his costume was gray and black. It didn't have the blue shine on it anymore. And the logo was cheaper, and it didn't have the yellow around it. And his personality seemed more emotionless, which does make sense, because the man who devotes his entire life towards fighting crime and none towards pleasure, he's gonna become like that. But his voice seemed more bland than from before. So with this one, I'm gonna have to side with the original. So it's obvious that the original was better than the remake, but the remake did make some brave steps, and it did make some better choices. And the remake, even though it's not as good as the original, is still a good show. So it eventually, Batman is good in whatever form he's in usually. Through the remake, you know, through Justice League, Batman is Batman. And I even heard they're going to be making a new TV show, Beware the Batman. And I hear these hardcore fans of the older cartoons say, no, it's going to suck, but how can you say it if you haven't seen Beware the Batman? So we'll see what Beware the Batman is like. But until then, I'm going to stay neutral on that. And Beware the Batman looks kind of like the style of Batman's mask, kind of is kind of like from the Batman. That's just kind of a notice thing. Anyways, thank you for your time, and have a good day.